It was around 9:30 in the morning on the 31st of October, 84. I was working as the crime reporter for the Indian Express. I was at breakfast and the phone rang. It was an officer I knew in Delhi police. We used to work through such contacts because officially we would never hear anything much from the police. He said, "Pata kar, Indra nu goli vaji hai. Medical Institute le gaye ne." I went to the Medical Institute. I think most people still didn't know what had happened. But around the place, presumably she was kept, there was very heavy security. As the crime reporter, it was my duty to report on the assassination and all the details of what happened. Bear in mind that those were days without mobile phones, without computers. So I headed on my scooter to my office at the Indian Express to find a phone to start making phone calls and try to get some information. The whole day was spent on trying to get that information together. Now, in the evening, as I was writing my report, we gathered from some of the police officers I had been speaking to and from others that violence had erupted outside the Medical Institute, where Indira Gandhi's body had been kept at that time. My colleague Joseph Maliakan went from the Express office to the Medical Institute, and he reported from there. And he reported, and as we discussed later, the slogan arose, "Khoon ka badla khoon." It was not an individual who raised that slogan here or there. It was an organized slogan. Someone had communicated not to an individual but to groups that this was to be the slogan. It was an organized slogan. It also became clear that from the Medical Institute, groups who had raised this slogan started going out. They began to stop cars, buses, looking for Sikhs. They found several, pulled them out of public transport, roughed them up, beat them up. At that stage, this was still, and at that place, not yet a move to kill anyone. Anyway, Joseph came back to the Indian Express office and reported the story, and I reported the story of the assassination. The next morning, I headed out, and the assignment for me, as I thought, would be on a follow-up of the assassination. We had managed to get a fair amount of detail together the first day, but there were two questions particularly that were of concern. The first was, what were the circumstances in which Beyan Singh was killed and Satwant Singh was shot? Because we know that after they had shot Indira Gandhi, they had both thrown their weapons down and surrendered. And we know what Beyan said, "Asi jo karna si kar liya, tusi jo karna si karo." The fact is that the code is that once someone has surrendered, thrown down their weapons, you don't then shoot that person, no matter what he may have done. Besides the code, from the policing point of view, it was terribly important to interrogate Beyan Singh. Was there a conspiracy behind the assassination? So this was one question. The other was that question of conspiracy. Was there somebody, some bigger force behind this killing? So these were the two questions on the first morning that were on my mind and which I was to prepare to report. Then everything changed. And it changed before I left home because I switched on television. And bear in mind, there was only Doordarshan, government owned. It was the only channel. It's not like today. And there was a live broadcast from Teen Murti Bhavan, where Indira Gandhi's body had been taken overnight. And column after column of men in almost uniform white kurta pajamas were filing past and shouting, "Khoon ka badla khoon." It was the only slogan. The slight variation of it that I heard was, "Khoon ka badla khoon se lenge," blood for blood. It was one slogan, and it was an organized slogan, visibly, clearly organized. The same slogan that a small band of people had taken up on the 31st was taken up on the first morning. Now, this slogan was being broadcast live on Doordarshan. A question arose, and this is not a retrospective question, it arose right then. Why was government television broadcasting a call to kill? We are not talking about broadcasting codes. We are talking about law. We are not talking about a television channel being irresponsible. We are speaking about a government engaging in an activity that was illegal. There is a law against this. You don't call for murder to be committed. And if someone does, then the government-owned television does not broadcast it live. Anyway, this is not a retrospective thought. There and then at that moment, I thought that this was illegal, that this was very, very frightening. Anyway, I tried to call various police officers to try and get some information what is happening in the city. I didn't get far. And of course, then I decided to head to the office to use the phone there, and then we would have to sit on our typewriters and file a report at the end of the day. I stepped out of the house and I saw something I've never seen before. There were columns of smoke rising all over. The sky was dotted with columns of smoke. Delhi was burning. It's not something I've ever seen before. Thankfully, never since. And there was one column of smoke in the distance to the west that was very, very heavy. I took my scooter and decided to go towards that heaviest column of smoke. I had got no information from the police on the telephone. And my only guide to how I must report the city was on chasing the thickest column of smoke. This was in Delhi. I headed to that place and reached Vasant Vihar. It was the Guru Har Krishan public school that had been set on fire. Now I know that school, I knew people there, and that biggest column of smoke arose from where the library was. So clearly someone had thought that books, once you pour kerosene over them, burn more readily than just furniture. Outside the school, there was a band of about 100 men, and there's a little nala and there's a little bridge, and they were just sitting there and they were watching. It was like they were watching their handiwork. These are the people who had set that building on fire. There was no police. There was a massive column of smoke that I had seen from about 8 to 8 miles away from my home. It was that heavy. And there was a police station in Vasant Vihar. Of course, they knew what had happened. They could see it. And there was not a policeman in sight. Then by the side of the school, there's an outer ring road, the equivalent of a sort of ring road here. And there was another band of men, and they were stopping every bus and car passing, and there were not many. Most of the city was deserted, and they were looking for Sikhs to attack. Now, I decided to go to the police station, Vasant Vihar police station. From that main road, it's about a 10-minute walk, couple of minutes ride on my scooter. And there I found all the policemen sitting inside the police station. They knew what was happening on the road outside. They could see the columns of smoke. They could see that smoke from the Guru Har Krishan Public School, and they were sitting there. I looked for the top officer there. I couldn't find him. I tried to speak to others. They just looked the other way. What became very clear was that there were bands of people who could do what they liked as long as the target was Sikhs. You could burn, you could loot, you could kill. There was no question asked. There was no police to protect these people. And from there I could see more smoke. This is only something that I had seen from my own house and followed. I didn't know what else is happening all over the city. So I went to the office and I walked in and someone said, "There's a man waiting to see us." And he was Sikh, tall, very eminent looking Sikh. It was a shocking sight. He had cut his hair, he had cut his beard in a sort of visible panic. His name is Mohan Singh. He said that in Trilokpuri in East Delhi, there's a massacre going on. He says he managed to somehow escape. Some others who tried to escape with him were killed. He came to the police headquarters, tried to report to them. The guard did not let him enter the building. He came to our office, he spoke to us. We immediately knew that there is something terrible. It's not just what he said, it was the sight of this man. My colleague Rahul Bedi and Joseph Malayakan, Joseph who had earlier, the previous evening gone to the medical institute, decided to go to Trilokpuri and investigate what had happened. I was to report on the assassination, and so I started speaking to police officers to get information. Then that is where I came to know that Gurudwara Rakabganj was under attack. I was told that people had been killed and that there was a massive attack there. So I dropped the assassination story for then I went to Rakabganj Gurdwara. At least 2 Sikhs had been burnt alive already when I reached. There was a massive mob. When I say massive, a couple of hundred, 200-300. And they were surging towards the Gurdwara again and again. And to my left, there was a column of policemen, at least, it was a platoon level police force, as the police would call it, and trying to speak precisely, there must have been at least 35-40 policemen there. They just stood. They just stood. This whole crowd was surging towards the Gurdwara. They just stood and watched. To the side was Kamal Nath, Member of Parliament. I cannot say that he was leading the mob, but certainly he seemed to have some control of them. Because the minute he signaled to them, they withdrew. The question is not that he was leading the mob in any obvious physical sense, but there was a communication between him and the mob, so that when he signaled, they stopped. Very quickly to flag one or two other incidents, and we have time running out. I, after Trilokpuri, heard that there was a lot of killing. Hundreds had been killed in Sultanpuri. I went with my colleagues. There was no driver willing to go out. I was driving, and there was. We went down a street, and there was a group of congressmen standing there, and they said nothing has happened. Anyway, we didn't take their word for it. I drove on and went to the house of a Sikh, and he said that people had been killed all around, and if we don't do something, he will also be killed, and the rest will be killed. Anyway, we came back, these Congress people, they blocked us. They wouldn't let us go. They attacked me. They tried to, one of my female colleagues was in the car. They tried to open the door, pull her out. Anyway, I drove fast out of that place, managed to alert the army. We'd heard about Rajiv Gandhi visiting Durgapura in East Delhi. I went there was a Gurdwara. And there had been many people killed there. We spoke to those people. Later, I'm just flagging these in very brief because we have run out of time. And I went 2 days later at the Karol Bagh police station. We'd heard that a lot of these people who had been looting and killing had been arrested. I went there, and the Congress Member of Parliament, Dharam Das Shastri, had come there asking for release of these people because they were his people. They were Congress people. We had the Member of Parliament not just acknowledging but proclaiming these looters to be his own people, men of the Congress party, and asking for the law to be cancelled and for them to be released. Anyway, my last brief comment: on the basis of what I saw, I filed affidavits before the Mishra Commission because these were eyewitness accounts. My affidavits were cancelled on the following two grounds. Mr. Justice Mishra, the Supreme Court judge, said to me, "Rakabganj, you were there, this is your affidavit." I said, "Yes." He says, "Can you produce an eyewitness to establish that you were there?" So I said, "I was there as a reporter. I'm not going to carry eyewitnesses with me." He said, "Oh, you can't establish that you were there." Number two, "Can you produce a logbook from the office to establish you were there?" I said, "It is not the practice. You don't know what is happening in the city. The city is in flames. You don't keep logbooks in the office." So my affidavit was dismissed on the ground that I could not establish through another witness that I was there as an eyewitness. Not by coincidence, this Justice Mishra was then appointed Congress Member of Parliament. Very briefly, I have shared a few things, flagged a few experiences. It is a continuing distress that the injustice continues. Thank you.